Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel Physics Radiate. Today we will see that how we can read and collect some information from the scientific articles, we can say scientific research. This lecture when I was a PhD scholar, I presented this a lecture to the undergraduate students. We They were the lab members, and they were interested in the field of perovskite solar cells. So this was important to motivate them and show them that how we can read the scientific paper, which is one of the steps in the research field. So let's see what we have today. First of all, there are some questions we need to ask ourselves. For example, why we need to read the scientific paper. First of all, we will focus on that, and secondly, we will see that what things we are going to read or we are going to do in our research. Then we will analyze that how we can do these things in our lab or in our research groups. So these are some questions. First of all, we have to ask ourselves, and then we need to focus our research based on these three important questions. So the first thing is why we need a scientific paper to read. Or for example, our supervisor just want to waste our time, or there is something important and they want to believe in the knowledge, and they want to develop the research field or developing some new ideas. So, and there is another thing, for example, we want to read a scientific paper. So because of these things, we know we get to know that what is going on recently in our research field. As we know that, for example, if you are reading the textbooks, so we know that there's most of the textbooks are out of the date, and on the other hand, the scientific journals or the scientific articles, they are very current, and they are discussing current issues. And as a comparison, for example, we are comparing textbooks and scientific articles. The scientific articles are very recent work compared to the textbooks. And the other thing which is important in the scientific articles, they can be replicated. We can use the results, or we can use the experiments by ourselves, and we can check that for example, one person did this experiment, and we can do that in our labs, and we can check that what is the actual data, or they are replicated or reproducible, and we can get the same results. The second thing, we can check the conclusion of the scientific paper or the scientific research done by others, and we can also can have some experimental conditions and so on. And also, for example, if we have the let's say scholarly articles, so they are, in nutshell, they are current. It means we have the up-to-date knowledge of the from the scientific articles, and they are replicable. It means the experiments can be performed by ourselves, and we can check the actual data, and they can be used in our lab. and also we can evaluate the conclusion and decide whether we believe the claim which is claimed in the scientific paper or not. So this is the actually the answer to why we are going to read the scientific papers. Then we have asked ourselves in the previous slides, we have seen that what are the what we need to read, or sorry, what we have in the scientific paper to read. Like for example, a scientific paper have these portions, or we can say parts. Title, it has a specific title with the names of the authors and affiliations. Then it follows by the keywords. Then it has the abstract, which is the summary, we can say the summary of our work or experiments. Then it has the brief introduction about the research which we have done, or which we are going to apply in our labs. Then it has materials and methods, results, discussion, conclusion, and acknowledgement, and so on. So let's see. So first of all, we also know what are the professional publisher, because for example, if we are going to read every article which is published by any publisher, so we may have some poor experimental data, we may have some poor written works. So there are some professional publishers. Before reading of the scientific paper, we should focus on that which publisher have published this experimental data, such as Elsewhere, Springer, John and Bailey and Sons. So these are the some of the publishers which we have to read in the paper of these journals. So how to read a scientific paper? The next question can be like this. So the let's say we are going to read the paper, so it is important that we should have some tips and to make these readings as painless as possible, because these journals or these articles are not just like novels or storybooks or some entertaining books or something like that. So definitely it will make you bored, but if we have some tips, and then we can make it easy for us to read these articles. So tip number one is we should have right equipments. For example, we should have a scientific dictionary, we should have a notebook, so that I can write down what I don't understand, what are the words which new to me. And let's say we are very new to the field, so we should write down each and everything which we don't understand. Similarly, we should have friends and colleagues or fellows in our lab, and we should discuss the papers which I have read, so that we can understand what is going on in the paper. Tip number two is for example, if we have a scientific paper and I read it directly throughout all the pages, so this is not a good idea. We should not go straight through, because as I wrote here, it is just like walking through a quick sand. So instead we should focus on sections or parts of the paper, as I have shown before, so that it can make the reading efficient and comprehensive, and we should get the idea very quickly. So for example, the first section, I'm going, let's say this is what I have to do, like for example, title, abstract, and I have to I have a quick look on these title and abstract. Then I should go to the experiment very briefly, that what like for example, if I'm going to read the title, so it will show me that what this what about this paper, and what the author have done, and what are the results, and what is the future outlook. So these things, like for example, this is one of our paper which was published in Nano Energy, and this is the yellow color highlighted that is shown here. Actually this shows the title of the paper, so it directly uh, tells us that uh, uh, which topic is going to be discussed in this paper, or what were the experiments about, like nickel oxide at the rate of carbon spares, a promising composite electrode. So it means it is a composite which is used as an electrode for scalable, means for the large scale purification of planar perovskite solar cells, and at low cost, means this was a low cost electrode used for the large area perovskite solar cells. So this shows, the title can tell us that what is going on in the paper. Similarly, the abstract shows us the brief or the summary, or the nutshell of the paper, and the future outlook of that work. Next, we have another part of the scientific paper which is shows the discussion. So next, we should go to the discussion from the title and the abstract, and then we can see the important results and reason for conclusions. What are the reason? Because this discussion part is very important, so that we can know that what are the important results, and how we can reason it with the other, for example, other existing experiments, or for example the laws or the equations we have. So we can reason it with these discussion. And for example, if we have some useful information, some knowledge used, or some equation we have used, so in the conclusion, we can, in the discussion, we can check that we agree with this or not, or the other researchers agree with this or not. So the next thing, we have another part, results. So the result, just we need to review the results, and which can provide the raw data, the figures and tables. For example, we have figures, we have tables. So these are just showing the easy way to see, or easy way to understand the raw data, or the statistical data of the experiments. Next, for example, let's say we have the for example, or here I have wrote that you might want to ask yourself, do I understand what the figures means, or do I understand the units being used? Do the figures and tables make the sense and communicate the data well? So in the results, we can evaluate, we can reason these things, and we can understand the paper very well by keeping these questions in mind. For example, this is the same paper which we have published in the Nano Energy. This is actually the part, or the section, which is results and discussion. We have result, for example, the powder X-ray diffraction experiments were performed to determine the crystal structures of nickel oxide at the rate of carbon spare composite, as shown in figure this one. Now we have the reason from the XRD pattern. This is the XRD experiment, and we have the figure. So now we are going to explain that from the XRD pattern of as prepared nickel oxide carbon spare composite, a broad peak around 24.5 degree correspond to the 002 diffraction mode of the graphitic structure, which is the famous carbon materials, indicating glucose were successfully carbonized under the hydrothermal process. Favored nickel oxide in figure this one, exhibit 5 will define. So it means that the data is are shown over here, and we are going to discuss what the data says to us. for example the crystal structure, let's say the other phenomena, and so on. So the research and discussion can be helpful in this way. And then we have to go to the introduction, and the introduction is important because it can explain the motivation and importance of the research, a brief research introduction, and it also provides the background of information on the research. You might want to ask yourself, for example, we have some question when we are going to read the introduction. Do I understand the background information? If I am new to the field, so I need to understand that what is the field about, and what have done before, and what are the questions which some of the researchers need to answer. Do I understand to look up references for more information? For example, as I said, for example, I'm new to the field, so I must go to the references and check that what was done in that reference article and so on. So in this way we can improve our knowledge related to the field, such as, for example, in the same paper as I shown before, we have some introduction section, and I will just read a few things to make it clear. Organic inorganic trihalide perovskite, this is the material which is used as an active layer in the perovskite solar cells, have been emerged as promising light harvesting semiconductors for solution processable photovoltaic devices. These sentences shows that what we have already in this field. And the first paragraph is just showing the basic background of the perovskite solar cells, and what are the, let's say, the efficiency in this specific area of the research. Then it directly goes, for example, the next paragraph, if we read it: despite the efforts for boosting device efficiency, there are certain concerns about the cost and high temperature processing of perovskite sources that can potentially hinder their large scale applications. So now this is the for example, the limiting area are the questions we need to address in the work in this specific area. The high cost originates from the tedious synthetic protocols and high purity requirements of the organic whole transporting materials such as pyrometrid and PTAA. So it means that introduction can show the brief history of the field, then what is going on, and what are the limitations of that field, and how we can address these limitations. So introduction is very important in this sense. Now the next part we need to read is materials or methods. So we need to understand the methods and materials. Let's say, for example, if we have used in our experiments nickel oxide in carbon spheres and so on, and what was the method, how we prepared the materials, how we prepared the devices, and so on. And so, for example, what we have designed for the experiments, and a brief introduction refer to previous papers by the authors as well in this section. As I will show it again from one of my articles, that is the experimental section. If we see here, all the analytic reagents were commercially obtained and used without further purification. So this was just the materials. Number one, that was synthesis of carbon spheres. Clear, we have some materials, how we prepared it. Then we have synthesis of nickel oxide and carbon sphere composite, and so on. So in this sense, experimental section can tell us what are the materials, what are the methods, how we obtain those materials, and how we applied in the, for example, in the perovskite solar cells, and so on. Then last but not the least, we have the conclusion. So we should read the conclusion, because this can summarize the work, and it can also tell us that how the results obtained in this article can be a can be make forward or can be reproducible for the next step and so on. Let's say over here in the same paper we have written that in summary, we employed cost-effective nickel oxide carbon sphere composite as counter electrode in large size planar perovskites for the first time after hydrothermally mixing and so on. So in the last, more or extending the application of the DHD, so it shows the future application of these materials or these devices. So this in this way we can get the information from the conclusion. So in nutshell, what we have actually what problem was studied. But let's say we have studied what was the paper about, what others and the author did. This is the comparison, the study area, and what we have got, what are the area of the study. As an example, in this in my field, for example, it was the perovskites versus how does he did it. Let's say how we perform the experiments, and how what we have got from the experiments and from the data and so on. Or in that what were the conclusion, summary, and future plans and so on. So by keeping these things in mind, so we should read the scientific paper in this way and read, which means we have to go this is one of the famous method. This depend on your choice. As I showed before, it was a little bit different. So that was my way of reading the scientific article and get the information from those articles and then proceed with my own experiment. However, this is one of the famous method to read the paper. It depends on your choice how you read it and how you can grasp the information from the articles. So this says that we should read the introduction first, then we go to the methods, then we have to go for the results, and then discussion and so on. But as we have seen before, that was my method to read the scientific article. That was a little bit different than this one. However, it depends on your approach and how you can read and how you can understand the paper. This totally depend on your approach. Up to now, we have learned that, for example, what we are going to read and how we can read and why we want to read these things and so on. So of course it is very time consuming, and you will get bored and so on. You may have no energy further, but you should have some guts to be relaxed, patient, and after that for example, if I have if I have read all the paper of all the scientific paper, all information on the scientific paper, so then I need to ask some questions that do you agree with the author's rationale for setting up the experiments. Let's say someone have done some experiments, so I should ask myself that do I agree this experiment or not. It can be asked, or it can be agree, or you can be agree or disagree when you are expert, or when you are when you know your field very well. So the second thing, did they perform the experiments appropriately? Clear? For example, if I am good at my research, so I can know, I can say that experiments is correct or not. So this is also after when you understand your field very well. Were there enough experiments to support the one major finding they are claiming? So what they have claimed, or they are supported by the experiments, and they were enough or not. So we should also ask this question. And then next, do you see problems in patterns, trends, data? For example, some of the figures are poorly presented, or patterns, or data, or analytics, and something like that. So we should also check that those things as well. And after that, we should ask ourselves that we agree with the conclusion or the data of the presented data or not, and so on. For example, if we have those things, then we should ask ourselves that what further questions do we have and how we can suggest to the authors, or to the experimental, or to the researcher that what should be done before. Sorry. And this is just an extra thing, that what type of research we have. So we should also know that there are mainly three types of the research articles or research fields, which is descriptive, comparative, analytical. Descriptive means that a question can be asked, what is there, what do we see, and so on. This is the description form. And how does it compare to other results or organism, are our findings journal, and so on. This is the comparison of the two findings or two experiments. This is the comparative research field. And one is the analytical, where we show that what is the mechanism, what work was done, what was the data, and what are the supporting figures, and so on. So generally we have these three types of the research. Now, as I mentioned before, that we have some professional publisher. So if we don't have those professional publisher and some professional authors or experimental researchers, so we may have problems, because most of the papers are poorly written, and we will not understand what they have wrote, and what they are going to discuss. So there may be many problems related to this part, poorly written. Another difficulty maybe have arises when the reader seeks to understand just what the experiment was. So poorly written is obviously if we have a poorly written article, so we will not understand what is the experiments about. And some of the authors are critical about their experiments. They don't know what is the critical point of the of the experiments or the paper. And for example, if we have such things, so we will have difficulties while reading the manuscript. Evaluating a scientific paper, so as we have seen before, so let's say we are going to evaluate the scientific article. So what questions does the paper address? This should be the first thing we should know, as we have the from the abstract as well, and from the introduction, from the title, what is the main conclusion we have from this paper. And let's say that conclusion or that questions is addressed, and it is supported by the evidence, the data, and the quality of the evidence, and so on. So this is actually we need to evaluate, this is the way we have to evaluate the scientific paper. The next thing we should think about that, for example, if we are going to read, so the first thing is we should need to understand the methods which is used in the experiments, so that we can understand that what are the limitation of the methods, and how we can improve that methods as well in the future. And then we have to distinguish between what the data show and what the others say. Let's say the other say that the XRD is shown in this way, and he says that scanning electron micro, so this is the different thing. So what data is shown and what the other says, it should be distinguishable and it should be agree with each other. Fourth, it is often helpful to look at the original journal or its electronic counterpart. For example, if we have the hard copies of the paper, so it may be difficult to search it directly or to check it on the online journals. So it is a good idea to have the electronic counterpart of the journals, and we can search that articles online, and we can check the references and so on. So there, this will make us to understand it thoroughly, each and every section. For example, if we have this, as I shown before, this is the part of that paper. For example, if we have data, we have the figures, so these figures and data supporting the claim of uh, our article of or research methods. As we have seen that this paper was about the nickel oxide carbon sphere, and here we can see this is the carbon sphere and nickel oxide is surrounded over here. So this is just like evidence of the material prepared. Then we have the methodologies. For example, we prepared those materials, and then we have the methodologies to apply those materials in our device, such as over here we have the spin coater, methyl ammonium chloride precursor, diethyl ethyl dripping, and so on, nickel and carbon spares, and we have just Dr. Blading technique, and we have to achieve these device performance. So this data shows that what was the methods, what was the material, and how it was employed in the fabrication process, and so on, and how the results were evaluated got from the experiments. Then for example, we have such a reading, and we have answered all the questions to ourselves, and so we should spend some time on the research, and we should look the research details. We should have to write down each new words or the idea or the relation which I don't know. I should write that on my note paper and my noteboard and notebook and so on. And after that, just imagine that you are teaching the paper or figures to the classmates. Teaching something to others is like another great way to learn. So then we have to start a database of procedures that you take the time to look up and teach to yourself, and so on. What are some of the common procedures that are used in various papers? So we should take that as a source, as a database to produce to yourself. Then also we need to have the we need to watch other lab members and experiences with the others. For example, how they produce the data, and how to interpret the data, and so on. And also, as we have seen that we should read papers, more and more papers about our research, and summarize the data or the experiments or the understanding from those articles, so that we can be uh, we can find many information about the research field of uh, that research field. If you are already in the field you plan to stay in, consider starting a database on papers that relate to your lab or project. For example, if we are going to plan our research in the perovskite sources, so I need to have specific area of the perovskite sources, and then I need to collect all the data about that specific area. And uh, therefore, for example, if we have those things, so it will be easy for us to know what is going on in the field and how we can further improve these specific areas. Now, in summary, in short, for example, if we have all those things and we read all the papers, we can understand the things, and we can do the experiments, we can replicate the data or the experiments which were done by others, and so on. So now we are ready to write our own paper, and this can be done by understand a paper of your field of interest thoroughly. uh, Definitely it will take time. It will have some trial basis experiments and let's say some simulation in the field, so that we can get more and more information and we get confident in that field. Then we have to get some ideas. Let's say one of the paper I am going to read, so what were the limitation of that paper, and what are the weak areas of that paper, and how I can address those areas, one of the areas, let's say. So that can be done by reading of those papers, discussion with colleagues, and uh, that will give us the idea that what should I do in that weak area to improve it. Then we have to go by the way of rules, as I mentioned. For example, we should discuss with the colleagues, then we should discuss with our supervisor or advisor. Then we should have, let's say, if we have some simulation software, so we should check with that simulation software to get some information. Then we need to check some experiments, or let's say one of the experiments, 2, 3, 4. So we should go by the way of rules. Then we have to design the theory. For example, what I will go to do and how I will do it as an experimental researcher. And then I should discuss, as I said, for example, we got some results, and let's say we have done some experiments. Then I should discuss with my professors, with my fellows, that what the phenomena is and how we can improve it, or and so on. Then we have the citation and references. What part of the paper cite other papers? Let's say I have wrote the paper, I have done some experiments. Now the citation and reference are very important, as our experiment is important to us. So similarly, the citation and references are very important, because it shows that the similar field have already done some research or some experiments. So what are the parts that the paper can cite the other papers and other articles? The introduction section, mostly it has the introduction section, and materials and methods, sometimes discussion, and sometimes few in results. As I mentioned over here, quality and quantity of the sources, these are just like a source of the database or the research field. Sources you have cited will enhance your understanding, and the references can be as valuable as your research methods and finding, because it shows that what have done before and how it was done, and how our work is different from those cited or reference articles. So it is as important as our methods and findings. And thank so up to this we have seen that these are the evidence of the paper, one of the paper, and we need that so that we can understand what are the uh, evidence, what are the data, and how they are supported. Next, for example, we have prepared or we have read every section of the paper step by step, and we get information from the article and so on. So we should spend a lot of time on each paper now and look up every detail. For example, if I don't understand any of the words, any laws, for example, any terms, any equation, so uh, uh, we need to go for the details, and we should understand each and every step. It may be long-term uh, work, but at the last we will understand that how we can learn and how we can get the information from the scientific article. Then we have to imagine that we are going to teach the paper, or the figures to the classmate. Teaching something to other is like another great way to learn. Then we have we have to start a database of producing that you take the time to look up and teach to yourself. What are some of the common procedures that are used in various papers? So in this way we will get through watch others in our lab experiences and find out what they are doing. For example, if someone is going to do some experiments in my lab, and so I should watch them, that how he's doing and what is the methodology he or she is going to apply. But the more you understand the procedure, the more critical you can be of data you need to interpret. For example, if you understand the procedure, so you can interpret the data you have collected from your experiment. So in this way you can get your goal, and read the papers which are relevant to the specific research, and maybe it will take several days, and to make the summarization of the papers, and uh, but once we get used to these things, so it will be easy for us in the future, and we can get the information very quickly once we get the once we get to use this feed. Let's say we have the paper related to our project, so sometimes we have to skip mm, some of the information, and we go quickly to the analysis of the and summary of the paper and so on. So it totally depends on the expertise you have in the field. For example, if you are a beginner or just a freshman, so you have to read each and everything step by step, as I have shown in the previous slides. And still it depends on your choice or your mind, that how you can analyze, and you can read, and you can get the information from the paper. It is up to you in which section you are going to study, and which section is easy for you to understand. However, that was my way to read the scientific paper and to get the information from the paper. Then for example we have all those things, and we can read, we can understand, we can get the information. So now we are ready to write our own paper. So this can be done as I shown before. Understand a paper of your field of interest thoroughly. So we should understand what is going on in the paper and how we can set the experiments, and how the others do that. And then we have to grasp some of the idea from the existing literature. As for example, as we have seen that for in the introduction in the last paragraph, we have seen that what are the limiting areas, or what are the questions to be addressed in the future work. So that is the idea how I will do that, limiting factor or limiting areas, and how I can address that. And then let's say I have the idea uh, to let for example, as I have done in my PhD, the cost effective HTMs for the perovskite solar cells. So then I have to go by the rules, like for example I have to check the information, what was done, what was not done in that field. And for example, how now, what will be the methodology to perform the experiments, and how I will interpret the data, how I will represent the figures, the tables, and so on. So this is the way of the rules. So we go by the way of rules in this way. Then we have to design the theory. Let's say we have, as I have done in my PhD, the simulation software was used for the to know uh, the energy band levels and the charge carrier dynamics of the perovskite solar cell. Then I have applied those simulation information into the experiments, and for that I have to design the experiments as well, and how I will do that. Then discuss with your professors, fellows, that I'm going to do this, and I have collected this information, I have this idea, and so on. Sometimes it happens that, for example, your mind will say, no, okay, this is a brand new idea and I haven't seen in other papers, but maybe your fellows, your professor knows that this idea is already existed, this idea is not applicable, and there are many chances to happen. Then for example, uh, we have the papers and we have wrote those papers, so then we need to have the citation and references. And the references and citation is as important as your research or methods or your findings, because it shows that which field is up to date, and what are the areas which have been addressed with the experiments, with the theory, with the laws, with the equations, and what are going to be addressed in the future, or what are the limitations. So that is very important in this sense, that I will be able to know that what I am doing is not done before. So mostly the citation and reference are done in the introduction section, because it contains the a brief history of the field. It contains the already addressed question, and it is also gave us a limitation factors in that field. So most of this citation and references are included in the introduction section. And materials and methods, sometimes in materials and methods you have to follow the other methods as well. For example, most of the perovskite solar cells fabrication of the spiroemitted or the electrode, they are almost the same. So we have to cite those already existed citations or references or articles. Then it has also include in the it should be included in discussion as well. For example, if you are discussing a law or some equation, so you have to give the citations or references to that equation as well, and sometimes in result as well. So as I mentioned before, quality and quantity of the sources you have cited will enhance your uh, understanding of the field and in which area you are going to do some research, and the references can be as valuable as your research methods and finding of these things. So in short, the citations and reference are very important, and we should take care of these citations. Let's say I'm working on the whole transporting materials and I'm addressing, let's say, the cost of these materials. So I should know most of the recent articles addressing the cost of the whole transporting materials, and I also know that I should know that I have to give the citation to these materials or cost of these materials. So in this way it will enhance the quality and quantity of the sources of your research. Uh, these are some of my publication and so on. Thank you so much for before that for watching this. Before that I will show one of my paper and we will just have a look that for example we have such a paper, so how I can read it and how I can understand these things very quickly. So I will just show you one of my paper. Okay, so let's see my publication. Let's see, go to the okay. For example, this one. Okay, let's see. So as I shown before, we have to read the title very quickly so that we can understand what the paper about, what is the paper about. So in this way it is about the carbon sphere and nickel oxide composite, which is used for the scalable fabrication of perovskite solar cells. Then we have to check the abstract of the paper, which shows us that how this material were used and what were the results and how it can be applicable in the future work, or what the authors believe that it will be beneficial for the future work. So then we have to go to the abstract section. Then also, for example, if we look the introduction section, so in the introduction section, this paragraph has a brief introduction of the field related to the in this case perovskite solar cells. Then further it has the drawbacks or the limiting areas of those let's say in the whole transporting materials, and the back electrode, which is silver and gold in this case, and describe why these issues can be addressed and can be addressed by some other materials. So the introduction section, brief history of the field. Then the remaining questions of the field, or remaining areas which can be proved or which can be addressed in the future, and then some of the work done by the other researchers in addressing that question. And then what we have done in addressing that question, and why it was important to do that as compared to the other work. Then in the last section of the introduction in this report, for example, we have if we are going to read this one, so in this report we develop a simple and cost-effective strategy for the synthesis of nickel oxide in carbon sphere composite, which acts as an efficient counter electrode in planar perovskite solution. The incorporation of nickel oxide at carbon sphere enhances the conductivity and so on. So in the last section of the introduction, we have seen this is concluding on the summary and the general summary and the general results, and then the future outlook of the paper. Then the experimental section, if we have the experimental section, so experimental section shows all the materials used, how they were used, how they were prepared, and what was the synthesis of the material. And for example, if we have this synthesis of carbon spheres, we have prepared carbon sphere, then we have make the composite with the nickel oxide, and how it were done, what were the supporting results, and how they were analyzed, and so on. Then for example, then we go for the methodology of the perovskite solar cells, how they were prepared, and then the experimental section also have the characterization tools used for the materials, and so on. Then we have seen that research and discussion have to discuss all the things which were done in the experiments and what were the results and how they were supported by the figures, by the tables. Like here, if we can see, these are the figures which were used in this paper, and these were supported by the synthesis. For example, if we have synthesized and so on, this were the results of the materials which were synthesized by those methods. And similarly, those materials were used in the perovskite sources, so this one is the experimental section, and so on. These experimental section also, these are the characterization of the material or the photovoltaic matrix of the material. And similarly, this section can be also supported by the tables, as we have discussed before. These are the stability. Also, this is the experimental section. And in the conclusion, as we can see in the conclusion, we have seen before that in the conclusion it summarized all the results, and which results were important or the most important, and how they were supported by the experiments or by the data presented in the manuscript. Then the future outlook, as we can see here, for example over here. Moreover, extending the application of the nickel oxide carbon sphere composite electrode to high quality perovskite films formation will definitely benefit the construction of other high performance optoelectronic devices. So this is the future section. So this also we have to care about that okay, we will have the results and the important results, and then we need to put an ending sentence that how it can be extended in the future work. Similarly, the other section we have discussed the references and citation. So the references and citation mostly they are in the They are in the introduction section mostly. I will show you a bit like here. So this is in section introduction section. This is the references, which is about the brief history of the material used and brief history of the field and so on. Like for example, I click it over here. So this shows that this uh, this paper or this article is stated in the field in the introduction section, and it shows the brief history of the material or the prescribed sources in this specific uh, area. Uh, Another section that can cite the other articles, that is the experimental section. And for example, over here, it may be you can follow the other. For example, carbon spheres were prepared by uh, hydrothermal synthesis from glucose precursor according to literature. So we have followed these literature 30 and 31 to prepare the carbon sphere. So the experimental section, as we have seen that the scientific articles are reproducible. So these two articles were published before and we reproduced their method, and it was almost similar uh, results as the carbon sphere were prepared in these two articles as well as in our experiment. So we have seen that yes, they are reproducible. That is the important factor of the research articles. And similarly over here, if we can read this one, after cleaning the glass substrate, an aqueous stock solution of this much was diluted to the required concentration. So this also this was actually the method in our lab over here. These were our lab mates, and we follow the same method again, and it results in the same titania thin layer. So I think you can understand now how to read the scientific paper and how you can get the information from it, and which section I need to read first, and do I understand that section, do I understand the phenomena or the results presented in the articles. So this was my way of reading. After that, you can use your own way. And thank you so much for your time, and good luck in your future endeavor, and see you next time. Please subscribe my channel, and if you have any question related to the simulation of perovskite solar cells, related to the experiments designing of the perovskite solar cells, and for example, if you are preparing the thin films of titania, tin oxide, perovskite layer, spiro, so you can let me know in the comments box, and please like, share, subscribe, and comments uh, to my channel, and I will be very thankful for your subscription.